Hi everyone, I'm Eternal EHD and welcome back to the channel. 12 years ago, I set out to do something utterly ridiculous, and that was to collect every single Xbox 360 game ever physically released in the UK. Not just a curated set of games that I love, but the entire library of Xbox 360 games. The Xbox 360 and that generation of consoles was the machine that came along at the right time in my life. I was in my mid-20s, I had no kids, I had a decent job, I had all the time in the world and very few adult responsibilities, as well as a healthy disposable income. And I spent so much of that time and money on my Xbox 360. I loved that machine with such a passion. It brought some truly incredible franchises and game experiences into my life. And I've always wanted to pay the ultimate homage to my favourite console and collect each and every single game ever released for it. Now, if you're new here, please put some clothes on. This isn't a naked video. If you're new here, please do consider dropping a subscription to the channel if you're into the golden age of video games in the Xbox 360 era, or if you're a game collector, or even a fan of fine retro gaming retrospectives. It's all here on the channel, and I'd highly encourage you to check out some of those videos. Plus, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and post a comment with your thoughts or any questions, as I genuinely love to hear from awesome, like-minded people. And with that shameless self-plug out of the way, let's crack on with the video. So after countless hours of researching the list, and even more countless hours of searching, shopping, browsing, swapping, trading, buying, selling, negotiating, haggling, and everything else I did to build that set, it's finally done. Every single Xbox 360 game ever physically released in the UK. The collection includes some absolute dross, games I'll never play, games I am truly sick of having to buy. It's got games with values already in their hundreds. It's got games that are as elusive as an honest politician, games that mean the absolute world to me, games that have defined my gaming tastes over my adult life, games that absolutely blew my mind, as well as games that turned out to be a massive disappointment. But whatever the game for the Xbox 360, if it came out on a disc in the UK, I've got it. It's been 12 years in the making. I dread to think how much it has cost me, or even how much it's worth. And I'm as fortunate as anybody, not just for being in a position to be able to buy them, but also having a wife that has allowed me to indulge in my ridiculous pursuit. She's a saint. I can't tell you how many times she's sat there and listened while I've excitedly told her about video games that I've acquired, knowing full well that she's got absolutely zero interest in what I'm talking to her about. How she's the only person I've ever known who's been genuinely excited to see just bloody dance games, so that she can consider whether it's worth playing or not. A wife with no interest in video games whatsoever, who has let me take over an entire large bedroom in our house to let me pursue a frankly stupid goal. And I know lots of you will have moved on to digital pastures, happy to sacrifice ownership for convenience, happy to forgo your ability to sell or trade just for the ease of not swapping your discs out. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. But for me, one of the biggest joys in video games now isn't just playing them, it's owning them, collecting them, having a tangible thing in my hands that I can clean up and restore and look after and treasure. And this whole set, to me, from the 50p FIFA games and the endless just bloody dance games, every single one of these games, to me, is priceless, because it's a full set. It's complete. It's everything that ever came out in the UK on a disc. It's 12 years of my life on display on a wall. And at this point, I guess I should probably share my final pickups that I've made to complete the set. First up, it's Rugby Challenge 3. This is actually quite a late Xbox 360 game. It arrived in 2016. In all honesty, I'm not super into rugby. I mean, I watch the Rugby World Cup, I watch the Six Nations, but I wouldn't really say that I follow rugby, so I don't feel like I'm the best person to judge its quality. Lots of other gamers will refer to Rugby 08 and the original Jonah Lomu Rugby Rugby Challenge as the kind of go-to rugby video games. But apparently this one's quite decent too. It was developed by Wicked Witch, who were predominantly a mobile game developer based in Australia, before they picked up an AFL license, which I believe is Australian Football League, and actually started developing games for consoles and handhelds. It was published by True Blue Games, who are an Australian publisher basically focused on sports games, including AFL, Rugby Challenge, Rugby League Live, and also Don Bradman Cricket. This is the England edition, which is the only version available in the UK. There was also an Australia, a New Zealand, and a South Africa edition for the other countries. The game also launched on Xbox One and PS4 at the time. Those versions have graphical improvements apparently, but the core game is essentially the same across both generations. Now, I picked this copy up from Vinted in the UK. I paid 14 quid including postage, which I'm actually really pleased with. The box itself is nice condition. Does have a little bit of sticker residue at the bottom, which is really easy to clean up. There is a full manual included, which does also include information on how to actually play the game, rather than just warranty stuff, which is quite rare for an Xbox 360 game released so late in its life. The disc itself is in okay condition. There are a couple of very light surface marks and scratches on it. It is going to need a little bit of a buff. I don't think it will need a skim, just needs a little bit of polish and some cleanup, but I'm pretty sure I can get this looking quite mint. Now that is all 3 Rugby Challenge games owned, and here they are, side by side, including the original Jonah Lomu Rugby Challenge. I've always felt that playing a video game is actually a really good way to learn a sport, so I might actually fire this one up and give it a go. You never know. And if rugby is your thing, it's Rugby League Live 2 World Cup Edition. Now this game's actually pretty rare because rugby league as a sport in the UK is consigned almost exclusively to the north of England, with very little interest anywhere else. Personally, Rugby League has kind of completely passed me by, even though on paper it shouldn't, because it's actually more similar to NFL than Rugby Union. I don't know, I just don't have the time to learn another sport, I guess. So this is not to be confused with Rugby League Live 2, which is a completely different game, even though it is the same game really, it's just not the World Cup edition. But it is a standalone game, it is a different title, it deserves to be in the set. This game is based on the 2013 Rugby League World Cup, which was actually held here in the UK, specifically in England and Wales. That competition was eventually won by Australia. No surprise there. Because of the kind of limited appeal of rugby league in the UK, an ex-colleague that I spoke to from Game, which is the largest specialist retailer at the time in the UK, he told me the game was actually ranged in only a handful of stores up to north. You know, places like Leeds and Wigan and Huddersfield and Wakefield. While it was apparently available to buy online, it is still a very much regionalised title here in the UK, which probably explains its rarity. Now, originally, I got an absolute steal on this. I bought a disc-only version off eBay from somebody who had listed it as just Rugby League Live 2. And I paid literally 5 quid for the disc, including shipping, and arrived and was in really good condition. I've since acquired this copy from a fellow collector. He was happy to part with it because it doesn't have a manual, which, in all honesty, does bother me slightly, but not all that much. Now, I paid 30 quid for this copy without a manual. And to be fair, that is a pretty ridiculous price because this game regularly pushes approaching 100 quid on eBay and Vinted here in the UK. I will probably upgrade it down the line, but for now, I'm happy to just own a physical boxed copy of it. This is the disc that I bought from eBay. It is pretty clean. It's got some radial marks from where they've tried to buff it out and polish it. I can do a much better job than that, but this copy is actually quite clean. Excuse the couple of fingerprints that I've put on it myself. But this one will clean up really nicely. And I hope the other collector doesn't mind me saying that this disc that I bought from eBay is actually in a lot better condition than the disc that he supplied me with. But we're all friends. It doesn't matter. So all in all, no manual, but delighted to have acquired this one to keep in the set. I was genuinely worrying that this one was going to be a silly expensive one. And of course, that means the Rugby League Live series is also complete. All 4 games if you include this World Cup edition, which, to be fair, as I said, is a full game in its own right. Right, that's enough rugby. How about we move on to a dodgy movie tie-in full of party games? It's Rio! I'll be honest, I've not seen the movie. I'm sure it was a perfectly fine animated romp, seemingly about birds and dogs, and I presume set in Brazil. But the movie isn't the important thing here. It's the game. Now, as the box suggests, this is all multiplayer party games. But before you scoff at that, just remember that Mario Party 3 on the Nintendo 64 and Fusion Frenzy on the original Xbox both exist. So that doesn't necessarily mean that this game is a sack of I mean, it's got a Metacritic of 60, and from the kind of critical and consumer consensus, it's okay for a couple of hours for kids, but it kind of lacks any kind of variety or originality. Apparently, it does have pretty easy achievements. You see, there's a way to boost the achievements for finishing each game on hard. Apparently, all you do is you load up the game with 4 players using 4 controllers. You use your main account to get in the lead, and just as you're about to win or before the timer expires, you essentially press back on the other 3 controllers to back them out of the game, and the game goes, cool, you've legitimately done that on hard. Have an achievement. I mean, if that floats your boat. So if you're an achievement hoarder, this could be worth a look. I bought this on eBay. I paid just under 12 quid for it, including postage. And to be honest, I'm actually really chuffed with that. It's not a massively common game. The movie did okay at the box office, but when this was released, there was also a Wii and a DS version that came out at the same time. And of course, they were much more child-friendly platforms than the Xbox 360 was. So while those versions are both common and easy to find, the 360 version is slightly less so. There are some chances that I saw on eBay asking for upwards of 60 quid for this, which I thought was a little bit steep. This copy I bought on a bit of a whim. The seller confirmed that it had a manual and was in good condition, so I took a chance. And in all fairness, it's actually a lot better than I thought. The box itself is nice and clean. The manual's in pretty good shape too. It does have some horrible sticker residue left over from a game pre-owned sticker, and it's got some slight creases at the top which I'll need to iron out. The disc itself is as you'd expect. There's a couple of light marks on it, but again, nothing major, no big deep scratches, and it should all come out quite nicely. So yeah, really pleased with that find. And seeing as how every single game so far has begun with the letter R, let's keep the streak going. It's Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now, I'm a little bit of a wuss when it comes to horror games. I did very much enjoy Resident Evil in the early days. I played Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 on the PS1. I played Resident Evil 3, I think, on the Dreamcast. And I played Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube. I kind of checked out with Resident Evil after Resident Evil 5 as it just didn't really do it for me. And I've not really gone back since, other than a very brief and rather terrifying step into Resident Evil 7 for a bit. So in all honesty, Revelations completely passed me by. Revelations 2 released back in 2015. It was one of those games that had the fad for episodic content releases. Think Telltale's The Walking Dead, and in fact most Telltale game series at the time. They were released between February and March 2015, and the retail version with all the episodes on the disc was released the day after the last episode came out digitally, 18th of March 2015. It's actually got a Metacritic of 82, and the game is fully co-op playable, and it's actually meant to be pretty good. As I said, I've kind of lost the plot on Resident Evil, but maybe I should actually push myself through one of these. I bought this one on Facebook Marketplace from a guy that literally lives in the same village as me. I paid just 5 quid for it, which I was delighted with. I did see when I bought it that it had some stickers on it. I thought, well, that's easy to get off. And then upon purchasing it, I found out that the sticker is on the actual inlay. Who does that? It's a shame really, is the box itself is actually okay. The disc is going to need a little bit of attention too. It's not too bad. There's a couple of marks on it. I am going to skim this one and then give it a bit of a polish and a buff just to try and bring it out in as good a condition as I can possibly make it. But for the sake of a £5, I thought it wasn't a bad deal at all. I'm going to have a go at getting these off. If I can't, it's probably going to need replacing down the line. But for now, it's okay. But this, of course, means the Resident Evil set is fully acquired. Here are all 5 Resident Evil games on Xbox 360, including Resi 5, 6, Operation Raccoon City, and the 2 Revelation games. Tasty. Next up, it's MX vs ATV Supercross. Now, this is the last MX vs ATV game that arrived on the Xbox 360, and it's a bit weird as to why this particular game has waited until the very last batch of games that I bought to be part of the collection. I'd love to tell you that there's some weird, wonderful reason for it, But the reality is, just as with other series that I'm not really into, like Dragon Ball and Naruto, I could just never remember which ones I had and which ones I didn't. I mean, I must have had this game in my hand at least a dozen times in CEX or at car boot sales or at charity shops or anything else. I just could never remember if I'd already got it. I mean, there's only 4 MX versus ATV games. It shouldn't be that hard to remember, but for whatever reason, I could never remember. In fact, that's one of the reasons that I started putting together a list in the first place for series like this and Dragon Ball and Naruto. Same with like the Lego games and Just Dance games and stuff that I just didn't really care about or have all that much interest in. It was like a buying guide to help me remember which ones I needed and which ones I didn't. And I guess this whole project has come about because of that. And yep, so for that reason, this game has waited until the very end for me to acquire it. And in all honesty, I don't really feel like I'm missing out on it either. The game's got a Metacritic of like 48, with frequent criticisms around controls, complete lack of originality, and being plagued by exactly the same issues that apparently plagued its predecessors. It's not that the subject doesn't necessarily interest me, but there's so many awesome off-road racing games on Xbox 360. Stuff like Colin McRae Dirt, or hidden gems like Pure, and even somewhat decent stuff like Nailed and Fuel. I don't know, I just never ever got an itch to play any of these series. Maybe I should fire one up at some point. I just feel like there's a few games like this, most of which do it better. As for this copy, I bought it from my local CEX for £3. Literally £3. The box itself is in really good condition. The manual is all present and also in pretty decent condition. The disc has again got some light marks on it. It's going to need a buff. It's probably going to need a skim as well. But there's absolutely nothing on there that I'm not confident that I can get out to a really good standard. Don't get me wrong, I've seen worse. It does need a bit of attention, but for the price that I paid, I'm genuinely happy. And again, this is the last MX vs ATV game that I needed. So here are all 4 MX vs ATV games in a line. Lovely. From powering off-road on 2 wheels to pedaling along roads on 2 wheels. This, my friends, is Le Tour de France Season 2014. Again, this is the last Tour de France game that I need to go along with the original and the 2012 and 2013 versions. And in all honesty, that's probably all you need to know about this game. I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I love taking my kids on bike rides. I'm just sensible and I avoid the roads. The idea of controlling a cyclist cycling through France while managing his stamina. I mean, it sounds almost as painfully dull as the concept of watching cycling as a sport. Yeah, I mean, I apologise to all cycling enthusiasts, but this genuinely sounds like one of the dullest video game experiences I could ever think of. The fact that there's 4 of these games is utterly baffling, but there is. I bought this copy on Vinted. I paid £22 for it. I managed to get the guy down from £30 because it doesn't have a manual. Again, at this point, looking at the prices that this game fetches, I was delighted to pay sub £40 for it, to be honest. I don't think the guy that I bought it from was a collector either. I think he just looked at the CEX sell price and taken a punt, and he seemed quite happy to negotiate when I pointed out it doesn't have a manual. The disc itself is actually alright. It needs a little bit of a buff, but there's nothing major on there that's going to cause me any problems. So yeah, all in all, I'm okay with this. I'm not that fussed on the manual missing. It was just get it for a good price, which I'm happy I did. So if you're interested, here is the full set of Le Tour de France for the Xbox 360. Yeah, that's alright, I'm not really that interested either. And now we arrive at the final piece of the jigsaw, the holy grail of UK Xbox 360 physical games. Final Fantasy XI Online. Seekers of Adoulin. Look, I don't know if it's Adoulin or Adoulin or Adoulin. I don't know. I'm going to call it Adoulin. If I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. I mentioned in my last video that this one had somewhat come out of left field. It was a late addition to the list, shall we say. Now, at some point, I'm going to make a full-on video explaining the retail release of this game in the UK, because across the research that I've done, let me tell you, it's an almost fascinating tale about how this game came to be as rare as it is. It's an expansion to Final Fantasy XI Online, and it launched in the UK in March 2013. Final Fantasy XI Online servers for both the Xbox 360 and the PS2 were terminated in April 2016. So despite this game's absurd rarity, comically, it is utterly utterly useless today. That's right, it doesn't work. You can put the disc into your Xbox 360, like I did. It brings up the title screen, it asks you to connect to the Play Online servers, and that's it. Nothing else happens. It is dead. You literally can't do anything with it. And in Xbox 360 terms, it is one of only a very, very handful of games that are no longer playable because they're online only. Now, this game is a far more common sight in both North America and Japan. But in the UK, Final Fantasy XI Online was somewhat more limited in its success. And as such, this expansion barely made it to market over here. Now, I know from verified purchase records very kindly sent to me via email that this game was available to pre-order on amazon.co.uk. I've had another viewer who has also confirmed that they pre-ordered their copy from the same site. But from conversations that I've had with a buddy of mine who used to work at Square Enix at the time of launch, he suggested that it was actually only available from amazon.co.uk, and he believes that the game was only manufactured once and to minimum order quantities, which he wasn't sure whether it was 250 or 500 units. Presumably, once Amazon had pre-ordered an allocation that they'd been given, that was it. It may have been on the website for as little as 4 days in total. Now again, none of this is actually confirmed. Please treat this as speculation for the moment, but I am trying to piece it all together, and I will try and put together a full-on video about how this title came to market and why it's as rare as it is. But anyway, it is ridiculously rare in the UK. I found this copy which looked in really good condition that went up on eBay. Now, at the time I was talking to a fellow collector who also had one. He'd offered me a slightly lower price. However, his version was missing one of the inlays from inside the box, and it also had the slightest tear on the bottom of the spine, which did put me off somewhat. But this one was in excellent condition, and after some back and forth with the seller on eBay, who really kindly took some really nice close-up photos to show me the condition in more detail, we agreed on a price of £207 for me to acquire this game that doesn't even work. Now look, I know that sounds ridiculous. That's what my wife said. But hear me out. That is actually a really, really good price for a copy of this game. Looking back through the eBay sold records, speaking to collectors who own a copy who have told me what they've paid for it, I actually feel I've got off really lightly with this one. One collector I spoke to had sold a factory sealed copy of this for in excess of £2,000. Now, admittedly, mine isn't factory sealed, but you see where I'm going with this. I knew it was going to hurt price-wise, but again, as soon as I knew that it was a genuine, legitimate physical game in the UK, I knew I had to buy one. And whether or not it works is not even a consideration. So to get it for what I did, I'm absolutely delighted. I know I could have bought it slightly cheaper, but again, for something like this, I always want to go for the very best copy that I can possibly get. And I'm delighted that I did. The seller was unbelievably brilliant. It was one of the best and most securely packaged video games I have ever received. And it was even in a Retro Protect seal when it arrived. I am going to unseal this one final time just to show you the contents and the condition. What am I doing? As you can see, the box is absolutely pristine. Front, back, and spine. He even put bubble wrap inside it to keep it safe in transport. This is the registration card that was missing from the copy that the other collector had for me. And the manual itself, as you can see, is absolutely pristine. As for the disc itself, you can see label side up is absolutely perfect. And the disc itself is absolutely immaculate. God, I hate having this out of the box. A special shout out to the seller, Sheridan 8-2009. So if you ever happen upon one of his listings, please buy with confidence. because he was a brilliant seller. And just to show you, here is the complete Final Fantasy set for the Xbox 360. All 3 editions of the 11 online base game, including 2007 and 2008. Now both expansion packs, as well as Final Fantasy 13 and 13-2, with lightning returns thrown in for good measure. And that is it. Final acquisitions done. Xbox 360 completed it, mate. But listen, just before I pop the metaphorical champagne corks, I do just need to clear one thing up. I've been running this list of mine for a very long time, and I was convinced I had it all and had it all perfect. At some point during 2024, when I acquired about 45 games in the space of a week or so, I noticed a tiny discrepancy in my counting compared to my list. Every time I counted my games, I seemed to have 2 more than I actually had on the list. Now, it bugged the life out of me, I'm not gonna lie. Now, I always put it down to having some random double pack or classic edition or limited edition or day 1 edition somewhere in the set. And because I had more games than were on my list, I didn't really worry about it. It was a simple counting error, or as I just explained. Now, an incredibly eagle-eyed viewer called Baz CN Game Collector got in touch in the comments recently and solved the issue for me. Now, somehow, and I've absolutely no idea how, there's 2 games that have been missing from my list for a while. They're not rare, they're not even good, and it's 2 games that I've owned for years and years and years. One is Connect Joyride, the other was Connect Star Wars. Honestly, I've no idea how they weren't on the list. Most likely they were on the list and I've somehow inadvertently removed them, but they were not there. So that means the total that I've been referring to, 1,176, is ever so slightly out. It's actually 1,178, which, having counted multiple times, is exactly the number of games that are on the wall behind me and in the stack next to me. It now matches up perfectly. So apologies for getting that ever so slightly wrong. I've spent about 6 hours going over the list again just to make sure that I've not missed anything else off. But again, if you do look at the list and you see anything you think is missing, please do let me know. And Baz CN Games Collector, mate, thank you so much for spotting that. I genuinely appreciate you, and I implore you to drop that man a follow. I'm going to put a link in the pinned comments or the description down below. Show him some love, because honestly, he stopped me from going mad. And again, just to clarify, how have I arrived at 1,178? Well, that's how many individual standard games there are. Yes, I've got stuff like Castlevania Lords of Shadow Collection, Star Wars The Ultimate Sith Edition, Red Dead Redemption Game of the Year Edition, Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition, but I haven't specifically counted those games on my list. Instead, you'll find those in separate sections at the bottom of the list, along with every classics variant that I believe exists. So, as is often the case with collections, it's how you count them that determines the final number you end up on. 1,178 is what I believe is the number of unique Xbox 360 games that were physically released on a disc in the UK. The true completionist number of various editions and variants is obviously a little bit higher than that. But this is it. Xbox 360, as far as I can tell, is done. Every single game physically released on disc in the UK is in my possession. The Xbox 360 is that special console for me. The one that cemented my love for this wild and ever-changing medium of art we call video games. It was the console that gave me thousands of hours of top-notch entertainment. It was the console that drew me into online gaming, introducing me to people who became friends. Friends to this day that I continue to share wonderful gaming experiences with. It was my trusty ally on a crap day. A loyal friend to me that took my mind off bad things. It was the party piece centre for Rock Band and Guitar Hero gatherings. It was an achievement hoarding device. It was the gaming consistent that I wanted. The system that gave me back so much, no matter how much time I put into it. This to me was gaming at its very best. The ushering in of the HD and the online era. I mean, sure, it was also the console that tried to convince me that Kinect was a good idea. It was the console that red-ringed more times times than you would ever care to admit. It was a console with stupid inconsistencies around region locking, and it was a console that made you buy bloody rechargeable batteries for the controllers. And it had way too many just bloody dance games. But even for its failings at times, it was my gaming life for over 8 glorious years. And I always wanted to pay homage to the Xbox 360 for all the joy that it brought to me. And today, I feel like I've done that. 2025 remarkably marks 20 years since the Xbox 360 launched in the UK. So to complete this entire collection in that anniversary year, to me, is something I'm genuinely proud to do. Cheers to you, Xbox. Thank you so much for watching. As promised, I said in my last video, if it got to 100 likes, I would begin a series showcasing my entire collection row by row. Well, you all smashed that target, and I'm a man of my word. So that will be the next series up. Please bear with me while I just work out the format of it, because there's a hell of a lot of games to go through. But I promise I will get cracking with that very soon, to go into a little more detail on every game in the set. So please do drop a subscription to the channel so you can be notified as soon as they start going live. Please help the channel by pressing that like button if you've enjoyed the video, and I genuinely love to see your comments below on the Xbox 360, on the collection itself, on your own favourites and your own memories of this golden era of gaming. And I mean, even if you want to tell me that the collection is a spectacular waste of time, money and space. Suggestions for the next console to collect are always welcome. And of course, if there's a game that you want me to do an Xbox 360 retrospective piece on, do let me know and I might just make it. Now I'm off to start the bit that I'm most excited to do, which is, of course, cataloguing, documenting, and photographing this entire lot to try and create the most detailed and complete Xbox 360 UK game database in existence. So until next time, thank you so much for watching. Be awesome to each other, and I unconditionally love your hecking faces.